The United States is unleashing a masterclass in maritime dominance, systematically dismantling Iran's most prized assets, one devastating blow at a time. In a stunning display of precision and power, American forces have zeroed in on the supertanker Majestic X, boarding and seizing full control of the vessel right in the heart of the Indian Ocean, thousands of kilometers from the Strait of Hormuz. This wasn't some routine patrol. This was a high-stakes operation that sent shockwaves through Tehran's crumbling shadow fleet network, exposing the raw vulnerability of Iran's desperate attempts to evade justice. With this latest triumph, Washington has now brought 4 critical vessels under ironclad U.S. control in a matter of mere days, turning the vast expanse of international waters into a no-go zone for Iranian oil smuggling. According to statements from U.S. Central Command, on the night of April 23, 2026, the MT Majestic X was meticulously tracked as it made a suspicious U-turn nearly 400 miles east of Sri Lanka while slicing across the Indian Ocean. This move screamed evasion, but the U.S. Navy was already one deadly step ahead. This wasn't just any tanker. The Majestic X was a massive VLCC-class crude carrier stretching 331 meters in length, registered under IMO number 198317, and built to haul more than 280,000 tons of crude oil in a single voyage. It had long been slapped with U.S. sanctions for its alleged role in funneling Iranian crude through shadowy illicit networks designed to dodge international law. As the vessel pushed deeper into the open ocean, its captain made the fatal error of shutting down the ship's tracking signals, hoping the darkness of the sea would swallow it whole and let it slip eastward toward safety. That desperate gamble exploded in their faces in the final heart-pounding minutes of the operation. Sleek Seahawk helicopters roared out of the night sky from a nearby U.S. aircraft carrier, their rotors slicing through the tension like blades of American resolve. Elite special operators fast-roped onto the decks before the Iranian-linked crew could even scramble for weapons or radio for help. The boarding was swift, surgical, and utterly humiliating for Tehran, another proud symbol of Iran's defiance brought to its knees without a single shot fired in return. Reports from the scene described panicked crew members staring down the barrels of U.S. rifles, their faces etched with the realization that their so-called invincible shadow fleet was nothing more than a floating target. The Majestic X's seizure was no isolated incident. It followed the same ruthless pattern that claimed the MTFI, another sanctioned vessel, in open waters between Sri Lanka and Indonesia after intelligence linked it directly to illicit oil transfers, exploiting every sanctions loophole Iran could dream up. Then came the Derina, a brazen Iranian-flagged super tanker loaded with a staggering 2 million barrels of crude, intercepted off the southern coast of India in an operation that left no room for negotiation. And deep in the theater, the Deep Sea, yet another giant crude hauler, was halted cold off the coast of Malaysia, its crew frozen in disbelief as U.S. forces swarmed aboard, turning off transponders. Futile. Hiding behind legal gray zones in offshore waters. Laughable. The entire formation of Iran's evasion tactics has now collapsed in spectacular fashion, shattering Tehran's delusional belief that the open ocean could ever serve as a safe haven from American reach. Washington's message could not be clearer or more brutal. International waters are no longer a shield for rogue regimes. The United States can and will reach you anywhere and anytime, with overwhelming force that exposes Iran's military and economic posturing as nothing but hollow bluster. According to fresh reporting from Reuters' General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, confirmed that as many as 34 vessels have already turned back under relentless U.S. pressure. This isn't minor enforcement. This is a full-scale maritime campaign on a level the U.S. Navy hasn't executed since the Gulf War era. By extending interdiction operations deep into Asian waters, Washington isn't just trimming Iran's foreign cash flow, it's igniting a chain reaction of internal collapse that's ripping Tehran apart from the inside out. But why does forcing a handful of ships to reverse course pack such a devastating punch? To understand the full fury, trace those retreat routes backward all the way to the tiny critical island of Karg, often called KG Island in the Persian Gulf. This isolated outpost is literally the umbilical cord of Iran's entire economy, handling and exporting up to 90% of the regime's crude oil. When those tankers are forced to turn tail under U.S. guns, the oil doesn't vanish into thin air. It surges backward into the island's already straining storage tanks, creating a pressure cooker of economic doom that Washington has aptly branded Operation Economic Fury. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has put Iran's energy infrastructure on a merciless countdown clock. In stark warnings issued just days ago, he made it crystal clear the storage tanks on Karg Island are filling to the brim, and Iran's fragile oil wells will soon have no choice but to shut down entirely. Bessent hammered home that the Treasury Department will keep hammering maximum pressure through this operation, systematically starving Tehran of every dollar it needs to fund its hateful proxy wars and military adventures. Any entity foolish enough to aid vessels like the Majestic X will be crushed under layers of devastating U.S. sanctions with no mercy and no escape. The strategy rests on a simple, ruthless physical law, unrelenting pressure. Crude oil keeps pumping non-stop from Iranian wells, but the sea lanes have been clamped shut by the U.S. Navy like a one-way valve of steel and resolve. Fresh data from Kepler paints a suffocating picture. Roughly 170 million barrels of Iranian crude are now stranded on the water, with about 154 million barrels drifting helplessly outside the Persian Gulf after being violently repelled by the American blockade. When those 34 supertankers are turned around, the backflow creates a terrifying surge against onshore storage, pushing Karg Island toward total meltdown. With a maximum storage capacity of only around 30 million barrels, the system is racing toward catastrophic failure. Once tanks hit overflow and oil continues gushing from the wells, Iran faces an engineering nightmare: shut down production or watch the infrastructure self-destruct. Blocking the daily export of 1.5 to 1.6 million barrels of oil strips Tehran of a staggering $139 million in vital daily revenue, more than $4.1 billion evaporating every single month. Sudden well shutdowns don't just halt cash flow, they spike geological stress underground, risking permanent damage to reservoirs that could cripple future output for years. This isn't theory, it's a live-action horror show unfolding in real time for every Iranian technician staring at the gauges in Tehran. Even if the blockade ever eases, Iran's production may never fully recover thanks to the irreversible strain this campaign has inflicted. The collapse is so severe it's now visible from space. CNN's latest satellite imagery reveals massive oil slicks stretching more than 5 miles around Keshem Island and Lavon Island, ugly black scars leaking like blood from a dying regime's veins. These visuals are undeniable proof that Iran's core energy infrastructure is hitting its breaking point, while the Pentagon gears up for even more decisive action. At the life-or-death choke point of the Strait of Hormuz, President Donald Trump drew an unmistakable red line. U.S. forces will open fire without hesitation on any Iranian speedboats caught laying mines that threaten global shipping. This order directly neutered one of Tehran's favorite dirty tricks, the very asymmetric tool the regime had wielded repeatedly in the past to bully the world and create artificial leverage. At the same time, American mine-clearing operations in the Strait have been ramped up to triple their normal intensity, turning the waterway into a fortress of U.S. surveillance and deterrence. Trump cuts straight through Iran's bluster with surgical precision. Iran doesn't actually want the Strait of Hormuz closed. They want it open so they can pocket $500 million a day. That single statement reduced Tehran's empty threats to pathetic political theater, exposing the regime's leadership as cornered and desperate. The United States has dramatically expanded its operational grip across key lanes, yet it's doing so with calculated high-pressure control targeting only Iran-linked vessels, while ensuring global commerce doesn't grind to a total halt. Hormuz isn't under absolute domination by one side. It's a high-tension zone where every ripple is monitored by American eyes. Every hostile move met with overwhelming response. Politically, President Trump has held an unyielding hardline stance, pushing Iran back to the negotiating table on America's terms. Contrary to earlier rhetoric, he extended the ceasefire at the last possible moment in late April 2026 to allow more time for talks while keeping the door wide open for escalation if Tehran continues its deceitful games. This isn't about forcing instant surrender, it's about applying relentless, intelligent pressure until Iran has zero choice but to concede everything. Yet even during this pause, America's war machine never sleeps. Washington sees the current ceasefire not as an ending, but as a strategic breathing room for logistics and preparation before the next crushing phase. U.S. Central Command's Admiral Brad Cooper laid out the brutal reality. We are rearming, refitting, and fine-tuning our tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is the terrifying calm before the storm. The image of a hunter methodically sharpening its blade right in front of its prey. America's unmatched ability to reload, rotate forces, and regenerate combat power at lightning speed remains one of its greatest asymmetric advantages, and Iran knows it. That replenishment is vital because recent operations under economic fury devoured massive amounts of hardware. A sobering report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies exposed the scale the U.S. expended between 20 and 50% of its THAAD interceptor stockpile in a compressed time frame and faced temporary shortages of Patriot systems. But the speed with which America is rearming sends an unmistakable deterrent signal to every adversary watching from the shadows to hammer home this dominance. The Nimitz-class aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush, CVN-77, has now officially surged into the Indian Ocean under CENTCOM command. This nuclear-powered behemoth arrived packing one of the world's most lethal carrier air wings, pushing the total number of U.S. carriers on station in the region to 3. With 3 carrier strike groups concentrated in this single strategic theater, Washington has assembled a literal wall of steel and precision firepower. This isn't symbolic posturing anymore. It's a crushing blockade apparatus, ensuring that no tanker like the Majestic X will ever slip through again. The aftershocks of this campaign have now rippled far beyond the Middle East, weaponizing the entire global energy supply chain and hammering Asia's industrial giants where it hurts most. Asia, which accounts for roughly 37% of the world's refining output, is absorbing direct body blows. Data from Kepler confirms oil imports into the region have plummeted 22%, hitting the lowest levels since 2016. Refining throughput across Asia evaporated by a shocking 2.7 million barrels per day in March alone. China's colossal industrial machine is being starved by the sudden cutoff of Iranian crude, Refineries nationwide have slashed fuel exports just to safeguard domestic supplies, with national refining capacity crashing from 15.4 million barrels per day down to just 13.4 million. U.S. allies like South Korea and Japan aren't faring much better. Operating rates have sunk to a dismal 65%. Even Singapore's critical refining hub has dropped below 50% utilization. The real cruelty lies in the chemistry itself. Asian refineries were engineered over decades specifically to process the heavy, sour crude that Iran once supplied in abundance. When the U.S. blockade choked off 8 million barrels of that exact grade, the entire regional system slammed into a technical wall. Desperate nations are now forced to scramble for lighter, sweeter alternatives like DUTI from the United States or Kazakh crude at premium prices that bleed their economies dry. But even those substitutes don't fit perfectly. American WTI simply isn't optimized for maximizing diesel and jet fuel yields that factories and militaries demand. Hydrocrackers and upgrading units sit idle or underperform, resulting in the permanent loss of at least 1 million barrels per day of critical diesel and jet fuel output. This diesel gap is the true choke point. No quick fix exists. Asia can buy alternative oil, but it cannot refine it efficiently enough to keep the engines of industry humming. Every single tanker like the Majestic X that falls under U.S. control doesn't just bankrupt Tehran, it locks away an entire continent's refining capacity and forces painful economic trade-offs that ripple into higher consumer prices, factory slowdowns, and strategic vulnerabilities. The full picture is now brutally clear. Perfectly engineered and offers Iran zero easy exits. Every single link in America's campaign reinforces the next with cold precision. The seizure of supertankers in the Indian Ocean has slammed shut Iran's final financial escape hatch. It has obliterated the myth that shadow fleets could forever evade the long arm of U.S. law. The ironclad order to destroy any mine-laying attempts in Hormuz has shattered Iran's cheap, asymmetric counterplay. Those speedboats and proxies that once gave Tehran a false sense of power are now proven useless against American air and naval superiority. Pressure on Karg Island is ticking down toward the total internal breakdown of Iran's oil heart. Meanwhile, diesel shortages are strangling Asia's supply chains and exposing the regime's isolation. At the epicenter, 3 U.S. carrier strike groups sit poised quietly, rearming and reloading for whatever comes next. They stand ready to deliver the final devastating blow if Iran fails to deliver a comprehensive surrender proposal. Washington has just demonstrated to the world that it doesn't need to drop thousands of bombs to shatter a hostile regime. To destroy an enemy's economy, the only requirement is total control of the oceans, and America has proven it owns them. The New World Order isn't forged in fragile paper treaties. It is enforced by unmatched naval power on the high seas. A single American command, forcing ships to turn around, can send tremors through the entire global industrial system. Any foolish attempt to breach this control now carries catastrophic risk, proving that U.S. economic pressure has evolved from mere deterrence into active, decisive shaping of worldwide energy flows. This crisis stretches far beyond Iran. It now engulfs Asia's major economies, all deeply hooked on Middle Eastern supply. When that flow is severed, production pressures and skyrocketing energy costs surface almost instantly. In this high-stakes environment, the ability or inability of both Tehran and Asia's powerhouses to adapt will decide the future. But let's pause right here for a moment, because this story is still unfolding in real time and the stakes couldn't be higher. With the Iranian military humiliated by these relentless naval defeats, its once feared Revolutionary Guard speedboats scattered, and its shadow fleet exposed as a paper tiger. How much room does Tehran actually have left to turn this disaster around? Has the momentum shifted so decisively toward the United States that Iran's only realistic option is total capitulation? What do you think Iran's next desperate move will be? More futile proxy attacks or a humiliating climb down at the negotiating table? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your perspective helps drive the conversation on these critical global flashpoints. To reinforce just how far the Iranian military has fallen in these late April 2026 clashes, consider the latest intelligence leaks emerging from the region. On April 27th, U.S. forces detected and neutralized a brazen Iranian attempt to escort a remaining tanker convoy with fast attack boats from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. What followed was a one-sided naval humiliation that will be studied for years. American destroyers and helicopters engaged the Iranian flotilla in a lightning-fast exchange lasting under 20 minutes. Multiple Iranian vessels were sent to the bottom of the sea, their crews rescued only after surrendering, while U.S. forces suffered 0 casualties. Eyewitness accounts from the scene described Iranian commanders broadcasting frantic distress, calls their once proud navy reduced to wreckage, floating amid the very oil slicks they helped create. This wasn't a battle between equals, it was the systematic demolition of Iran's remaining naval pretensions, proving once and for all that Tehran's military machine is outclassed, outgunned, and outmaneuvered at every turn. Satellite feeds captured the aftermath in chilling detail: burning hulls, abandoned life rafts, and the unmistakable trail of defeat stretching across the waves. Tehran's state media tried to spin the incident as a minor skirmish, but the world saw the truth: a regime whose military pride has been publicly shattered, its ability to project power reduced to desperate propaganda. This latest humiliation follows weeks of similar failed provocations, each one met with faster, smarter, and more lethal American responses. The Iranian army and navy, long touted as regional powerhouses by regime mouthpieces, are now exposed as brittle shells unable to protect even their own economic lifelines. The crisis may not have reached its absolute peak yet, but it is barreling into an even more unpredictable and complex phase where consequences will be felt for decades. Every intercepted tanker tightens the noose. Every failed Iranian countermove deepens the humiliation. Every barrel of stranded oil accelerates the internal collapse. The United States has drawn the map of the future with naval steel and economic precision, and Iran is running out of ink to redraw it. So, as we stand on the edge of what could be a historic turning point in global power dynamics, the question remains urgent and personal. In the current balance of power, has the Iranian regime's military and economic backbone been broken beyond repair? Or does it still harbor one last trick up its sleeve? How would you advise the next steps for American leadership? Maintain the pressure or push for decisive resolution? Share your thoughts in the comments section right now. Your voice matters in these conversations that shape how the world understands these high-stakes confrontations. Don't forget to like this report if you want more hard-hitting, no-holds-barred analysis that cuts through the noise. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next update on these world-changing power shifts. We'll be back soon with even deeper dives into the unfolding drama. Until then, stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember the oceans belong to those strong enough to control them. See you in the next breakdown, where the truth doesn't just surface, it dominates.